A re rapeleng. Modimo mothata yotlhe wena o leng esi moabi wa botlhale le kitso. Rona bathanka ba gago ba re kopaneng hano ka ntlha ya leina la gago. Re neele gompieno botlhale jwa gago jwa se le godimo go re kaela mo ditherisanyong tsotlhe tsa rona. O bo re neele gape poigo ya leina la gago le go ikgaphela kwa thoko dikgatego tsotlhe tsa rona gore merero le dikgakololo tsa rona di ise kgalalelong ya leina la gago, tshiamo, kagiso le thitibalo mo gatsheng leno la rona go isa popaganong ya setšhaba sa rona ka ntlha ya leina la ga Jesu Kriste mo rena le mmoloki wa rona. Amen.
Amen. Pray be seated. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, and our invited guest in the gallery, I think it's befitting to start off by saying compliments of the new season and welcome back from the festive break. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas and New Year, and you are well rested and ready to deal with the budget meeting. Let me also welcome among you, in a special way, the members of the Diplomatic Corps, former presidents, former speakers. Kevin, I'm busy. The Right Honorable PTC Skelemani, former speaker, and member Skelemani. The Attorney General. I know that the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeal have traveled, and those that are here on their behalf, I also recognize you. Lo tekale le moga ba gaetso le baruti le dingaka Let us start our business of today with tabling of a paper. Honourable members, I understand that the Minister of Finance, His Honour the Vice President, has a paper to table. Honourable Minister, Your Honour.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to table the financial statements, tables, and estimates of the Consolidated and Development Funds revenues 2026-2027.
Let the paper be tabled. Let's go to a presentation of a government bill. Clerk.
Presentation of a government bill.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members. I understand that the Minister of Finance, His Honour the Vice President, has a bill to present. Honourable Minister, Your Honour the Vice President.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to present the Appropriation 2026-2027 Bill, 2026 Bill number 1 of 2026 for a first time.
Let the bill be read the first time. Clerk.
Appropriation 2026-2027 Bill 2026, Bill number 1 of 2026. First reading.
Point for second reading. Your Honor, the Vice President and Minister of Finance.
Forthwith, Mr. Speaker.
Forthwith. Okay, let's go to second reading. Clerk.
Notice of motions and orders of the day. Appropriation 2026-2027, Bill 2026, Bill number 1 of 2026, second reading.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members. The question is that the appropriation 2026-2027 Bill 2026, Bill number 1 of 2026 be read a second time. Honorable members. Before I call upon the Minister of Finance, His Honor the Vice President, to present the budget speech, let me remind you, bring your attention to Standing Order 53.3, which reads that a member shall not interrupt the presenter in any way whatsoever during the presentation of State of the Nation address or the budget speech. Order 53.4 will be applicable on Wednesday, that when the Leader of Opposition is responding to either the SONA or the budget speech, he also will not be interrupted in any way whatsoever. Furthermore, honorable members, in the unlikely event, I'm sure you have heard this when you board flights, in the unlikely event where circumstances dictate, please be informed that I may invoke Standing Order 102.3, which states that the Speaker may, however, increase in his or her discretion the time on any item within the constraints of stipulated standing orders without a formal motion being moved. In the unlikely event that the speech will take us beyond 6 o'clock. In the unlikely event, okay? And I call upon His Honor the Vice President and Minister of Finance to present the budget speech. Or Minister. Halimo Rosen de Katwayalo.
Mr. Speaker, let me acknowledge you and let me acknowledge the presence of President Boko, and let me stand on the protocol which you have already articulated. Let me also recognize all the distinguished men and women and all the citizens of Botswana, wherever they are. And let me say to them, Dumelang, Rumera, Dumlani, Hoemedach, Murumere, Nitishere, Tsagao, Moro, Rialocha, Kore, Omlu. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to present to the National Assembly the budget proposals for 2026-2027 financial year. Mr. Speaker, when I stood before this honorable House last year to deliver my first budget, I spoke candidly about the fragile state of our public finances, the erosion of fiscal buffers, the weaknesses in key government systems, and the lived realities of our people, particularly the heavy burden of unemployment borne by our youth. That budget was, by design, a statement of truth, a clear-eyed diagnosis of where we stood as a nation and the scale of the task before us. Mr. Speaker, the 2026-2027 budget, under the theme, A New Era of Economic Transformation and Fiscal Prudence, builds directly on that foundation. It marks a deliberate transition from diagnosis to delivery as we advance reforms to restore stability, strengthen institutions, and lay the groundwork for inclusive and sustainable growth. This budget is not merely an instrument for allocating public resources. It signals a fundamental shift in how growth will be driven away from dependence on public spending as the primary engine of opportunity, and towards an economy anchored on productivity, private initiative, and disciplined execution. It is inspired by our national true north, a high-income Botswana that is digitally enabled, export-driven, economically diversified, where every citizen is employed, empowered, and fulfilled. It also sharpens our focus on exploiting and nurturing those natural resources or sources of comparative advantage capable of sustaining growth beyond what the government alone can finance. Mr. Speaker, this budget is fully aligned and gives practical expression to the priorities articulated by President Gideon Boko in his 2025 State of the Nation address, delivered under the theme, The Steady Path, Delivering on Our Promise. The President called for a decisive transformation of our economy beyond diamonds, and central to his message were the values of integrity, citizen empowerment, and job creation. The 2026-2027 budget translates this national vision into a concrete policy choices, resource allocations, and institutional reforms designed to deliver inclusive growth, restore confidence, and create sustainable opportunity for all Botswana. Mr. Speaker, the 2026-2027 budget is firmly anchored in and inaugurates the implementation of the 12th National Development Plan and the Botswana Economic Transformation Program. These frameworks were developed through extensive consultative processes involving cabinet, members of parliament, traditional authorities, district leadership, the private sector, labor organizations, civil society, and development partners. The inclusive approach strengthens ownership. It strengthens alignment and collective responsibility for delivery across institutions. Crucially, the Botswana Economic Transformation Program represents a decisive break from an earlier development approach in which government identified the problem, designed the solution, and largely financed the reform. In an environment of limited fiscal buffers and higher cost of inefficiency, this model is no longer sufficient, nor is it sustainable. Under the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, government's role shifts decisively from being the primary driver and financier of economic activity to being the architect of an enabling environment that clears bottlenecks, enforces discipline, aligns policy, and coordinates delivery. This is not government stepping away, but it is government stepping into its proper strategic role. We are charting this course amid heightened global uncertainty characterized by geopolitical tensions, trade tariffs, declining commodity prices, and a retreat from multilateralism. These forces further constrain fiscal space and raise the cost of delayed reform. And as the risks intensify and global trade patterns shift, these realities compel us to deepen regional cooperation, broaden partnerships beyond traditional alliances, and accelerate the transition towards a more resilient, productivity-driven, diversified economic model. Mr. Speaker, as we deliberate on this budget, we do so fully aware of the realities facing our people, and chief among them is the health crisis that has tested our nation's resilience. In August 2025, the collapse of the medical supply chain compelled government to declare a state of public health emergency. And while that emergency has formally lapsed, the challenge remains and the recovery continues. To address the underlying challenges and secure lasting stability, government is now in advanced discussions to conclude a government-to-government arrangement with the United Arab Emirates, in which it is expected to provide the Ministry of Health with the affordable supplies required to normalize operations and restore confidence in the health system. Mr. Speaker, at a time when our nation is already navigating significant economic and social pressures, the outbreak of the foot-and-mouth disease in Zone 6B has emerged as a dark cloud over our agricultural sector and the rural livelihoods of our people. Foot-and-mouth, Mr. Speaker, is a devastating animal disease, carrying severe economic consequences through production losses, through high containment costs, and through prolonged restrictions on access to international markets. Government has and will continue to respond swiftly and decisively. Available resources have already been mobilized, and a National Emergency Operations Center has been established to coordinate a national response aimed at containing the outbreak and preventing its spread to the other zones. In the immediate term, Mr. Speaker, an amount of 97 million has been availed for this emergency operation. This response is specifically designed to avert the risk of cross-border incursion from South Africa and neighboring countries, while simultaneously preventing further transmission within Botswana. To strengthen frontline containment, 10 mini command centers have been established in districts bordering South Africa and Zimbabwe, ensuring rapid response, surveillance, and enforcement at critical entry points. The successful eradication of the foot-and-mouth disease and the timely prevention of its spread is not only vital for protecting livestock and rural incomes, it is essential for safeguarding Botswana's continued access to high-value export markets. In particular, Mr. Speaker, it underpins our eligibility to trade under the SADC European Union Economic Partnership Agreement, which provides duty-free, quota-free access to one of the world's most lucrative markets. Mr. Speaker, the resilience of Botswana is well known. The financial and in-kind contributions made by government, together with the active participation of farmers, of communities, and all stakeholders in this national effort, stand as a clear testament that in times of adversity, Botswana come together. United in purpose, we will overcome this challenge and protect the integrity of our agricultural economy and our standing in global markets. Mr. Speaker, before finalizing the 2026-2027 budget, we undertook targeted consultations with local authorities, with the youth, and with general stakeholders. We also received valuable inputs from labor unions, from the business community, from civil society organizations, and other stakeholders, as well as through our online call, which attracted more than 1,000 responses. I express sincere gratitude to the men and women of our country and the institutions who contributed to this process. Mr. Speaker, all the submissions received matter. They reaffirm that Botswana do not seek to be passive recipients of policy, but that they seek to be active co-authors of our national journey. And while not every proposal could be implemented within the budget cycle, we have already begun adopting those submissions where immediate implementation is feasible, while others are undergoing detailed analysis to inform policy beyond the budget cycle. I wish to assure all who share their views that every submission is being taken seriously. We will transparently reflect on these inputs. We will distill the key themes that have emerged and produce a comprehensive sentiment report to guide our ongoing efforts to transform Botswana in a manner that is inclusive, responsive, and firmly grounded in the aspirations of our people. Mr. Speaker, some of the contributions strengthened initiatives already within our planning pipeline, giving us confidence to accelerate execution where consensus is clear, such as the thoughtful policy brief from the Youth Climate Council Botswana on the establishment of a dedicated National Climate Change Authority. Mr. Speaker, similarly, it emerged that our people hold strong views, very strong views, Mr. Speaker, about the poor coordination and the poor conditions of public infrastructure, including our schools, our hospitals, our clinics, and the roads which they rightly regard as unacceptable. Government shares this sentiment fully and agrees that the state of these critical public assets must urgently be addressed. And therefore, it is proposed that for 2026-2027 financial year, maintenance be allocated 1.85 billion to rehabilitate and preserve existing government assets, including schools, health facilities, government buildings, roads, and wastewater treatment plants, with disciplined financial management and fair market pricing, where costs reflect the true value of work delivered, rather than being inflated simply because the client is government. This allocation should be sufficient to restore basic maintenance standards across the public sector in the coming financial year. To ensure the effective utilization of these investments, it is further proposed that no virement from maintenance votes be permitted. This measure will ensure that maintenance funds are applied strictly for their intended purpose, and that government finally breaks the cycle of deferred maintenance and escalating rehabilitation costs. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about building an inclusive and deep economy. Mr. Speaker, in the 2025 budget speech, I set out 4 interlinked strategic foundations to guide our reform and transformation agenda. First, I talked about halting the financial hemorrhaging within government. Second, I talked about stabilizing the economy and preparing for the takeoff. Third, I talked about initiating tangible steps of change. And Finally, building a new Botswana. These foundations formed a deliberate and sequenced framework designed to transform our economy into one that is deep, resilient, diversified, and inclusive. The 2026-2027 budget builds directly on this framework, advancing its implementation and reaffirming the continuity and the resolve of our reform journey. Phase 1, halting the financial hemorrhaging in government. Mr. Speaker, this phase is anchored on 3 pillars. First, fixing government systems. Second, strengthening oversight institutions to safeguard public resources. And third, mobilizing the private sector and society as active partners in restoring efficiency, discipline, and accountability. The 2026-2027 budget sustains this focus, recognizing that fiscal sustainability cannot be achieved without disciplined systems, without credible oversight, and without a whole of society commitment to value for money. Government systems. Mr. Speaker, I draw attention to the deteriorated state of our public financial management systems, to our practices, to our processes and the dysfunctions that has resulted in persistent financial losses. We committed that supplementary budget requests would be considered strictly for unforeseen requirements or genuine emergencies. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to report that over the last 2 financial years, the 2024-2025 and the 2025-2026, no supplementary budget requests have been approved. Where line ministries sought additional funding, they were required to prioritize these needs within their respective approved allocations. This marks a decisive break from past practices where supplementary budget had become routine, with damaging consequences for fiscal sustainability. Mr. Speaker, our efforts have started bearing fruits. As announced in the 2025 budget speech, the strict enforcement of government purchase orders and the discontinuation of commitment letters has been implemented to curb the accumulation of unfunded obligations. These measures were further reinforced through the temporary centralization of GPO issuance within the Ministry of Finance from July 2025. This decision, Mr. Speaker, has had a demonstrable and material impact on expenditure control. In the 3 months preceding the decision, government spending through GPOs averaged approximately 1.14 billion per month, with total commitments amounting to 3.4 billion between April and June of 2025. Following the centralization of GPOs, Mr. Speaker, average monthly spending declined significantly to approximately 584 million pula. between July 2025 and January 2026, or 49% reduction in monthly expenditure levels. Cumulatively, this moderation in spending reflects a substantial tightening of commitment controls and confirms that centralized oversight has been effective in curbing non-essential procurement, improving expenditure discipline, and reducing fiscal leakages across the government. Further expenditure, Mr. Speaker, further expenditure containment has been achieved through the implementation of travel moratorium, covering both domestic and international travel, alongside tighter control on overtime payments. These measures underscore the tangible impact of disciplined expenditure management. Mr. Speaker, these immediate control measures are being complemented by deeper structural reforms to modernize the procurement system. And in line with the reform agenda outlined in last year's budget speech, Cabinet approved the National E-Procurement Strategy in June 2025, providing a clear and sequenced roadmap for transitioning from manual to fully digital procurement. Implementation of the National E-Procurement System is progressing steadily, with the system expected to be fully operational before the end of 2026-2027 financial year. Once completed, this flagship reform will significantly strengthen governance. It will restore transparency, integrity, and enhance efficiency and value for money across the entire public procurement cycle. Mr. Speaker, in the last budget, we committed to introducing the Efficiency in Process Initiative, a reform positioned as a cornerstone of our broader fiscal consolidation agenda. We have made limited progress in some aspects of this initiative, particularly integrating our systems to support efficient revenue collection, as well as strengthening the institutional and human capacity required to collect revenue effectively. And notwithstanding these challenges, Mr. Speaker, government remains steadfast in advancing this reform. Mr. Speaker, in line with the initiative, extensive consultations were undertaken with 9 ministries during the preparation of the 2026-2027 budget. These consultations resulted in the revision and partial revision of existing user fees and service charges, as well as the introduction of new cost recovery items aligned with the principle of fairness and value for money. And as we deepen this reform through technical cooperation, we are confident that the Efficiency in Process Initiative will play a critical role in strengthening revenue mobilization, reducing fiscal leakages, and supporting our broader objective of building a more efficient, disciplined, and fiscally resilient public sector. Mr. Speaker, we are determined, and we have started, and efforts have been undertaken for a comprehensive review of a development manager model as part of our broader effort to halt financial hemorrhaging and restore value for money. The DM model was introduced in 2023 with a clear and noble objective to address long-standing initiatives or inefficiencies in project delivery intended to accelerate implementation and improve coordination across complex infrastructure programs. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, in several jurisdictions internationally, this model has delivered positive outcomes. However, in Botswana's context, a comparative assessment of projects that were to be implemented under the DM model against those delivered through conventional approaches reveals unacceptable cost differentials. Under the DM model approach, the construction of new primary schools was to be approximately 34% more expensive. A principal hospital project recorded a cost variance of over 56%, amounting to more than 630 million, while road projects were on average 11% more costly. Following a full review of all DM projects and contracts, only 16 projects were found to be advanced and are currently under implementation, while 132 projects have been suspended at conceptualization stage. Mr. Speaker, the experience with the DM model has exposed systemic weaknesses that must now be decisively addressed. And these include ad hoc decision-making, inadequate cost-benefit analysis, weak project selection and appraisal processes, poor adherence to established control frameworks, and limited institutional capacity to conceptualize and execute mega infrastructure projects. Botswana's history of underperforming mega projects makes it clear that business as usual is no longer an option. Mr. Speaker, the government has adopted a more structured, evidence-based approach to project execution. Through the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, a set of strategically significant and transformative government projects underwent rigorous analysis. The process brought together all stakeholders from government and the private sector, resulting in shared consensus on implementation models, on risk allocation, and on credible cost estimates. Mr. Speaker, government remains firmly committed to ensuring that every strategic project, including transformational initiatives such as the Chobe Zambezi Water Transfer Scheme, rail infrastructure projects, the upgrading of A1 and the National Digital ID program, are executed correctly at the right cost and in full compliance with the public finance management legal framework. Mr. Speaker, this commitment applies equally to projects delivered through the public-private partnership, PPP, arrangements. And while PPPs do not require upfront capital outlays by government, they create binding long-term fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities, as government is obligated to repay private sector investment over the life of the contract, typically spanning 15 to 30 years. These obligations must be transparently budgeted for and prudently managed. Fiscal discipline, transparency, and accountability in project selection, in project structuring, and execution are therefore non-negotiable. Mr. Speaker, the identified transformational and strategic project in the BTEP will serve as the foundation for correcting past failures, for institutionalizing best practice, and deliberately building a new culture of project delivery in Botswana. a culture anchored on value for money, a culture anchored on integrity, a culture anchored on results. And to all those entrusted with the responsibility of executing these projects, government officials, implementing agencies, and current and future investors, I urge you to place the interests of Botswana and Botswana first. Reflect on how country-changing and life-changing it will be if these strategic projects are delivered at the right costs, are delivered with integrity, and with the speed not only for today's citizens, but for future generations of Botswana. I implore you to tap into the same spirit with which our forefathers drove Botswana's early transformation, with limited resources but a profound sense of duty. They built institutions, they built infrastructure and trust that laid the foundation of our nation. And over time, we have lost some of these elements. We have lost that spirit. Let us therefore hold one another accountable and recommit to a standard of governance worthy of the people we serve. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say a little bit about strengthening governance and oversight. Mr. Speaker, the first session of the 13th Parliament registered substantial progress through the enactment of 26 bills. This bold legislative agenda aimed at modernizing governance, strengthening institutions, and positioning Botswana for a more inclusive and resilient future. Mr. Speaker, government has commenced the review of the Public Procurement Act 2021 to align it with the global best practices and strengthen transparency and accountability. The review seeks to improve efficiency, to reduce delays, and create a deliberate and structured pathway for previously underrepresented groups, including local manufacturers and other key sectors, to participate meaningfully in public procurement without distorting the economy. Mr. Speaker, the review of the Public Finance Management Act 2011 is in its final stage. It aims to strengthen accountability, oversight, management, and control of public funds. Further, it aligns the Act with the requirements of the public finance management reforms and ensures compliance with international best practices, including anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing standards. Mr. Speaker, the review of the Financial Reporting Act 2020, which commenced in October 2025, will introduce regulatory measures to promote fair competition between multinational and local audit firms. It will encourage joint audits between multinational and local audit firms for public interest entities, and empower the Botswana Accountancy Oversight Authority with adequate resources to conduct regular inspections of multinational firms. The review of the Public Procurement Act, the Public Finance Management Act, and the Financial Reporting Act will be tabled during the 2026-2027 financial year. Mr. Speaker, Botswana's transformation journey risks being undermined if we do not act decisively to address the declining performance, or our declining performance on the Global Corruption Perceptions Index. To this end, urgent steps are being taken to operationalize the independence of the Directorate of Corruption and Economic Crime, and in parallel, this review and repeal of the Corruption and Economic Crime Law is underway and is expected to be finalized during the 2026-2027 financial year. These reforms will modernize enforcement powers, close legal and procedural gaps, strengthen deterrence, thereby safeguarding institutional integrity and supporting Botswana's path to high-income status. Mr. Speaker, government has established a National Coordination Office on anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism and proliferation financing. This important milestone comes at a defining juncture as Botswana intensifies preparations for the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group mutual evaluation scheduled for January 2027. The establishment of this office demonstrates government's resolve to adopt a whole-of-government approach to financial crime management. The office serves as the central mechanism driving national coordination, strengthening interagency collaboration, and ensuring that Botswana's legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks fully comply with the Financial Action Task Force requirements. Mr. Speaker, the National Risk Assessment and recent mock evaluations point to a scenario that requires our collective and urgent attention. They reveal persistent weaknesses, including inadequate customer due diligence, insufficient verification of beneficial ownership, and cases lost due to evidentiary and procedural shortcomings. While the risks are real, the opportunity to avert them remains firmly within our grasp. With decisive action, strengthened coordination, and the collective commitment of the government, the private sector, regulators, and all relevant stakeholders, Botswana can still turn the tide. By acting now and acting together, we can safeguard our financial integrity, we can restore confidence, and ensure that Botswana successfully meets the requirements of the upcoming mutual evaluation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about Phase 2, stabilization and the takeoff. Mr. Speaker, we remain committed to building a forward-looking policy environment that strengthens government effectiveness, enhances institutional discipline, supports investment, and lays a solid foundation for accelerated growth. In this context, the introduction of the Botswana Economic Transformation Program is both timely and transformative, serving as the anchor policy instrument for the country's takeoff phase. The program provides coherent policy direction by placing the private sector at the center of development and driving diversification beyond the traditional sectors. It brings together reforms, infrastructure development, skills enhancement, and enterprise support into a unified and purposeful economic transformation agenda. On state-owned enterprises, Mr. Speaker, state-owned enterprises are central to Botswana's transformation journey, with the potential to drive growth in strategic sectors, with the potential to expand infrastructure, crowd in investment, and secure essential services for all our citizens. However, their persistent reliance on government funding presents substantial fiscal risk, underscoring the urgent need for structural reforms to strengthen governance, improve operational efficiency, and ensure long-term financial sustainability. Recognizing their national importance, government is implementing a comprehensive SOE transformation agenda anchored in a new governance and ownership framework. This framework is designed to formalize oversight, align mandates with national development priorities, and shift SOEs towards disciplined capital allocation, towards higher productivity, and towards improved service delivery. Mr. Speaker, we are determined to stabilize the Botswana Meat Commission and is beginning to bear fruits. The Commission is undergoing a far-reaching turnaround that is revitalizing the beef value chain and restoring confidence among our farmers. So far, it has cleared 698 million in arrears. It has strengthened internal controls and it has achieved significant operational gains, including a 22% increase in throughput at Lobatse plant and a 31% rise in revenue to 1.04 billion on a year-on-year basis. Mr. Speaker, strategic investments such as the meat value addition plant, the revitalized tannery, and the upcoming multi-species abattoirs in Gaborone and Zabo will deepen value addition. They will diversify production, widen market access, and enhance farmer incomes. These developments will generate sustainable jobs. They will revitalize rural economies and position the BMC as a commercially sustainable, export-oriented enterprise. It is therefore imperative that we resolve the FMD foot-and-mouth situation urgently so that we do not lose the hard-earned gains that have the potential to transform our economy. Mr. Speaker, consistent with the commitments made in last year's budget speech regarding the scaling up of production at the Botswana Vaccine Institute, the institution continues to serve as a cornerstone of our national animal health system and key exporter of vaccines across the region. And as foreshadowed last year, government has moved beyond intent towards implementation. To address aging infrastructure and unlock additional capacity, a new blending and filling lab is currently under development and is expected to be completed in the 2026-2027 financial year. The investment will significantly increase production capacity, will ensure full compliance with good manufacturing practices, and enable the diversification of vaccine products, thereby positioning the BVI to strengthen regional supply chains and contribute meaningfully to export-led growth. Mr. Speaker, government is laying the foundation for long-term agriculture-led industrialization and inclusive job creation, with the National Agricultural Research and Development Institute, NARDI, playing a pivotal role. NARDI is advancing national seed self-sufficiency through the development of a locally adapted open pollinated variety seeds aimed at addressing persistent shortages of high-quality seed, improving yields for smallholder farmers, and reducing reliance on costly imports. During the 2026-2027 financial year, government will upgrade NARDI laboratories towards accreditation, expand testing capabilities, and modernize the seed processing plant. These strategic investments are expected to strengthen the national seed system, generate revenue, and create employment. Complementing these efforts, Mr. Speaker, are high-impact technology-driven initiatives, including organic fertilizer demonstrations and drone-assisted crop nutrition, as well as the expansion of watermelon value chains into juices, jams, and other processed products. Collectively, these interventions underscore a clear national direction of transforming SOEs into disciplined, high-performing institutions, deepening value addition and export competitiveness, and accelerating job creation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about the Phase 3, tangible steps of change. Fostering economic diversification. Mr. Speaker, government's sustained efforts to deepen Botswana's integration into global markets are beginning to yield tangible and measurable outcomes. We have successfully secured market access to fresh citrus exports to 17 international destinations, including the European Union, Canada, the United Arab Emirates, South Africa, Russia, Hong Kong, reflecting the strengthening of our trade relationships and growing confidence in Botswana's agricultural standards and export capacity. This expanded market access, Mr. Speaker, has translated into strong export performance, with fresh citrus exports increasing from 2,790.68 tons in the 2024 season to 13,711 tons in the 2025 season. This represents growth of over 390% and creates significant income and employment opportunities for local producers. Mr. Speaker, government continues to play a facilitative and strategic role in the process by engaging targeted trade negotiations with key economies, including South Korea, the United States of America, China, and India, with the objective of unlocking additional export markets. These engagements are not limited to citrus production alone, but are intended to broaden access to a wider range of high-potential agricultural products, thereby supporting diversification, enhancing our competitiveness, and strengthening the contribution of agriculture to economic growth and food security. Mr. Speaker, government continues to make significant progress in advancing its mining sector diversification agenda, with the Khoemacau copper mine expansion launched, supported by secured financing and expected to employ up to 5,500 people at peak construction in the coming financial year. The development of a battery-grade manganese is similarly on track, as Menzi Battery Metals has completed key demonstration-level milestones and is nearing completion of the definitive feasibility study. Implementation of the National Mineral Resources Exploration exploitation, and value chain development strategy is underway. Mr. Speaker, government has commissioned a feasibility study to assess the unbundling and corporatization of Botswana power generation assets, currently held by the Botswana Power Corporation, BPC. The study aims to determine the preferred unbundling model, to outline the necessary institutional and governance arrangements, and evaluate the legal, regulatory, and financial implications of the proposed restructuring. Once completed, government will consider the findings and provide policy direction on the most viable model to pursue, guided by the objectives of ensuring energy security, improving electricity affordability, and increasing private sector participation in the power sector. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to positioning Botswana as a regional energy hub, both as a reliable exporter of power and as a catalyst for new industries such as data centers that require stable, high-capacity electricity. To advance this ambition, Mr. Speaker, the National Integrated Resource Plan has been revised upwards to deliver an additional 1.5 gigawatts of renewable energy between now and the first quarter of 2027. To operationalize this vision, government is implementing the Botswana Power Roadmap outlined in the revised Integrated Resource Plan IRP 2025. As part of this effort, a number of IPPs have since been engaged to deliver projects covering both renewable energy and coal thermal power generation. Mr. Speaker, implementation of the 600 megawatt Mamabula coal-fired plant is on track, and the first 150 megawatts is expected by December 2026. And the full 600 megawatt is expected to be delivered by June 2029 as planned. The government has commissioned the 100 megawatt solar PV plant in Madinare and 3 small grid tied projects in Bubonong, Shakawe, and Khanzi. In addition, the 100 megawatt solar PV plant in Jwane is scheduled for commissioning in March 2026, with additional small-scale projects expected within the next 24 months. The Maung 600 megawatt solar project is under procurement, whilst the procurement of Letlakane 400 megawatt solar PV is still under preparation. Further, the 400 megawatt Isang solar PV project has been moved forward for implementation during 2026. Mr. Speaker, to meet the base load requirements and ensure system reliability, government will prioritize the rehabilitation of Murupule B power station and the development of additional coal-fired generation capacity. These investments underpin national energy security while creating opportunities for electricity exports through regional power purchase agreements. All these efforts are expected to stimulate industrialization, support economic diversification, and position Botswana as a competitive and reliable energy supplier in the region. Mr. Speaker, the tourism sector is already demonstrating its capacity to mobilize private investment and create jobs across the country. During the 2025-2026 financial year, government facilitated the allocation of 5 tourism sites and concession areas in Ngamiland and Makgadikgadi National Park, attracting envisaged capital investment of more than 360 million pula. These projects are expected to create over 500 jobs and generate rentals for community trusts, directly strengthening local economies. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the fast-tracking of 11 lease renewals covering 27 lodges in Ngamiland has unlocked further investment potential, estimated at 800 million pula, while safeguarding more than 1,500 existing jobs. These developments underscore tourism's growing role as a driver of employment, of citizen participation, and private sector-led economic diversification. Mr. Speaker, under the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, tourism is being repositioned as a catalytic investment-led sector through a pipeline of 21 high-impact projects that we hope will diversify products, deepen value chains, and expand employment opportunities. Collectively, these projects are designed to increase visitor numbers, raise per visitor spend, stimulate private capital investment, and create jobs across hospitality, construction, transport, creative arts, and services sectors. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about Phase 4, Building a New Botswana. Mr. Speaker, as government drives economic transformation, we recognize that getting land administration right is one of the most powerful levers for change in the lives of our people and the economy at large. It is for this reason that in the 2026-2027 financial year, government will commence the modernization of Botswana's land administration systems through the Geospatial Information Center. This marks the first phase of a 4-year program to upgrade the land information system, to strengthen integrated geographic information systems, and enhance governance and project management capacity across the land sector. This transformation, Mr. Speaker, directly addresses long-standing challenges, including outdated systems, fragmented data, weak interagency coordination, and delays in the issuance of secure land titles and their registration under the deeds registry. Mr. Speaker, this reform is both people-centered and transformation-driven. For citizens, it will mean clearer processes, it will mean reduced waiting times, it will mean fewer disputes, it will mean timely access to secure land titles, enabling families to plan, to inherit with certainty, and to use land as collateral to access finance. For the economy, Mr. Speaker, it will unlock land as a productive asset, it will accelerate project approvals, it will improve investment facilitation, and it will support the shift towards a more diversified private sector-led model. Mr. Speaker, in the previous budget, we committed to establishing a local commodity trading platform as a key intervention to ensure fair and transparent pricing for agricultural produce. Since that announcement, Mr. Speaker, substantial groundwork has been undertaken to translate this commitment into a viable and credible market institution. In this regard, during the 2026-27 financial year, government will launch the Botswana Mercantile Exchange, BMX, as a strategic policy instrument to support economic diversification. The BMX will introduce an organized, market-driven pricing mechanism for commodities such as sorghum and meat, aligning domestic prices with international benchmarks. This is expected to reduce income volatility for local producers and improve price discovery. Beyond agriculture, the BMX will contribute to reducing Botswana's over-reliance on diamonds by creating new value chains, positioning the country as a regional trading hub, and strengthening the integration into global trade networks. The National Fund of Funds, Mr. Speaker, and the MSME financing reform. I wish to say a little bit about that. Mr. Speaker, in my maiden budget speech, government committed itself to a fundamental shift in how we support citizen-owned enterprises. We stated clearly that Botswana must move beyond fragmented, loan-heavy interventions towards a more strategic, market-enabling approach to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises finance. And this to be done through the establishment of a National Fund of Funds as a cornerstone of a modern financing ecosystem. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, in 2025, the World Bank undertook a comprehensive study under the Botswana Financial Sector Development Strategy, focusing specifically on MSME access to finance. The study confirms that our current MSME financing model remains overly reliant on direct lending and on collateral-based credit and is administratively heavy. Public schemes that are unintentionally crowding out entrepreneurs, innovators, disruptors, creatives, and other brilliant ideas, crowding them out, including bomma le borra ba semausi ba dimausu, le bomma le borra ba metselo, among others. It further concludes that future impact will not come from loans alone, but from a well-governed second-tier funding mechanisms, credit enhancement instruments, and patient capital structures that can support innovation, early growth, and scale. Mr. Speaker, the study provides government with a strong, evidence-based foundation to design the fund correctly, from governance and risk sharing to alignment with international best practice. It affirms that a fund of funds model can channel capital through professional and indigenous intermediaries. It can strengthen non-bank financial institutions. It can support equity and quasi-equity instruments and expand access to finance without distorting the market or placing undue fiscal pressure on government. Mr. Speaker, in parallel, government has already undertaken its own studies and benchmarking exercises of international experience. And one such case is Georgia, where public policy recognizes that young innovators cannot be developed through debt instruments alone. Instead of pushing early-stage entrepreneurs directly into loans, government identifies high-potential individuals through competitive processes. These individuals are then placed into structured development programs, providing mentorship, providing industry exposure, providing facilities, and providing time to refine their ideas. Only after successful incubation, participants who demonstrate commitment, participants who demonstrate capability and growth potential are supported through grants. This approach has produced and continues to produce viable firms able to later access equity and commercial finance. Mr. Speaker, this experience reinforces a simple truth that when we demand collateral from those who have not yet had the opportunity to accumulate assets, we are not managing risk. We are excluding talent. This is not a failure of these aspiring entrepreneurs. It is not a failure of our creatives, but it is a limitation of our ecosystem. Mr. Speaker, in the 2026-2027 financial year, government has proposed an allocation of 1.31 billion across programs to support MSME financing. However, this level of funding remains insufficient to fully address the diverse and often complex needs of the MSME sector. To bridge this gap, government will continue to work of establishing the National Fund of Funds, which is expected to be operational in the 2027-2028 financial year. Mr. Speaker, the groundwork for the establishment of a fully fledged Botswana Sovereign Wealth Fund is underway. The process will include the enactment of a comprehensive legislative framework that regulates governance, investment policies, and institutional safeguards in alignment with the Santiago Principles, of which Botswana is one of the original architects. The fund, which marks a significant milestone in our fiscal and economic reform, will serve as a stabilization buffer during periods of economic volatility, enabling governments to smoothen revenues and safeguard fiscal sustainability. The fund will also ensure that national wealth is preserved, grown, and deployed in a manner that delivers lasting value for current and future generations. It will also serve as a strategic instrument to advance economic diversification and stimulate job creation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about advancing transformation. And I'll talk about the National Development Plan 12. Mr. Speaker, the 12th National Development Plan, approved under the theme Building a Diversified and Inclusive Deep Economy for Sustainable Jobs, marks a decisive turning point in our development and our transformative journey. Through this theme, the plan places the private sector firmly at the center of economic expansion and recognizes that long-term prosperity will not be built on shallow growth or narrow sectors, but on an economy with depth, stronger value chains, higher productivity, diversified exports, and firms that compete beyond our borders. Mr. Speaker, the focus of this plan is on improving national service delivery performance to 75% by 2036 through the introduction of innovative implementation approaches and the institutionalization of a robust monitoring and evaluation framework. In this regard, NDP 12 is underpinned by targeted actions aimed at strengthening coordination and accountability across the public sector, centered on enhanced implementation mechanisms, improved data management, and the systematic institutionalization of the national monitoring and evaluation system. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about the Botswana Economic Transformation Program. Mr. Speaker, the Botswana Economic Transformation Program is a special program within the National Development Plan, which is focused on accelerating transformation through structured delivery. Through the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, BTEP, we have moved beyond broad aspiration into a phase of disciplined, results-driven execution. The program applies rigorous project preparation and transparent performance matrix, ensuring objective evidence-based project selection, clear accountability for delivery with each of the BTEP projects, having its own 3-feet implementation plan and continuous performance monitoring. Mr. Speaker, BTEP identified 186 projects and initiatives across 6 economic priorities, namely agriculture, manufacturing, financial services and digitalization, infrastructure, tourism, energy and mining, and 3 social sectors, that is healthcare, education, and social protection. The program, which developed a specific true north for each sector, has the potential to unlock more than 500 billion in cumulative investments, create more than 512,000 jobs, and transition Botswana towards a high-income, export-driven, and digitally enabled economy by 2036. The BTEP ensures that productivity, competitiveness, and innovation are placed at the center of development, while shifting the growth engine towards a dynamic private sector-led economy, supported by sound policy, fiscal discipline, and efficient public service delivery. It is therefore designed, Mr. Speaker, as a catalyst for a new way of working within government, one that is intended to drive systemic change across the broader public sector and the nation over time. It serves as a platform for cultural, institutional, and operational reforms, allowing government to test, to refine, and embed new approaches that can eventually permeate throughout ministries and agencies. Mr. Speaker, while NDP 12 defines national priorities and long-term direction, BTEP has translated some of these priorities into 186 bankable, executable projects supported by enabling reforms and coordinated delivery pathways. To achieve this, the BTEP Secretariat goes beyond the traditional implementation frameworks. It plays an active role in driving reforms, supporting projects that require financing by facilitating land and regulatory processes, and unblocking constraints to ensure that priority projects move from concept to execution. Mr. Speaker, this new way of working is intentionally ring-fenced to protect its effectiveness. Ring-fencing allows BTEP to operate with greater agility, with accountability, and with focus, creating conditions for a new performance-driven culture. With the right safeguards and strong endorsement from the highest political leadership, this culture is expected to be successfully demonstrated within BTEP and then progressively diffused across government, enabling both inward and outward flows of reform and learning. Mr. Speaker, the BTEP represents our resolve to do things differently, to do things faster, to do things smarter, and to do things with measurable impact. It is a strategic vehicle for long-term fiscal sustainability and economic resilience. And through targeted interventions and continuous monitoring, the program will enable Botswana to scale up new industries that can compete regionally and globally. This marks a deliberate shift from business as usual approach to results-driven approach, where implementation is rapid, is agile, and is action-oriented. Mr. Speaker, during the 2025-2026 financial year, significant progress was achieved. This includes successful completion of the BTEP labs, which convened stakeholders from government, private sector, academia, civil society to co-create high-impact sector interventions. The BTEP Secretariat, which is ring-fenced within the Ministry of Finance, acts as a central delivery engine for BTEP projects and reports to the Vice President and the President of the Republic of Botswana, President Gideon Boko. And he gets an update every single week. The Secretariat coordinates actions, monitors, progresses, and removes bureaucratic barriers and removes bureaucratic barriers. Furthermore, a public-facing digital platform or portal offers real-time access to project information and investment opportunities for the public and stakeholders. It is already in place. By publishing transformative BTEP projects on the public digital portal, government has deliberately opened access for ordinary citizens and project proponents to a global pool of investors. This transparency has enabled locally driven initiatives under BTEP to be visible beyond national borders, positioning them for private sector financing and partnerships. Since its launch, the platform has attracted strong interest from both domestic and international investors, expanding the funding pipeline for BTEP projects and stimulating concrete discussions and commitments. In doing so, the portal has elevated Botswana's development agenda onto the regional and global stage, reinforcing government's strategic shift toward a private sector-led, export-oriented economy. Mr. Speaker, as part of BTEP lab process, stakeholders undertook a comprehensive review to identify priority legislative and regulatory reforms. Reforms required to improve Botswana's business environment and unlock private sector investment. These reforms cut across key sectors, including energy, agriculture, financial services, and manufacturing, infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Mr. Speaker, relevant ministries are actively working on the identified amendments and regulatory changes to remove bottlenecks, improve ease of doing business, and enhance competitiveness. Government will provide periodic updates on the progress of these reforms, and they are central to creating a conducive environment for investment, for job creation, and the successful implementation of BTEP. Mr. Speaker, allow me to acknowledge the recent announcement of a significant financial sector reforms aimed at improving liquidity, enhancing payments efficiency, and expanding financial inclusion, which support the broader economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about national priorities for 2026-2027 financial year. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about export growth and the diversified economy. Mr. Speaker, government is steadfast in its resolve to advance the private sector as a central driver of a diversified, export-oriented economy and sustained economic resilience. This commitment is consistent with deepening private sector participation, enhancing enterprise competitiveness, and accelerating the growth of scalable firms with strong export potential. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is being repositioned from subsistence and import dependence to a modern export-oriented agro-industrial sector built on value chains, agro-processing, and regional and global market access. Under BTEP, we are implementing 26 transformative agriculture projects that focus on crop and livestock production and processing, cold chain and logistics, and market access. Through clustering, processing hubs, and integrated logistics, Botswana aims to convert its land, its water, and its farmer base into competitive exports in meat, horticulture, nutraceuticals, and high-value crops. As an example, Mr. Speaker, one of the BTEP agriculture-based cluster projects is set to make its first confirmed export of moringa to Germany in, let me say, shortly after Valentine's. I was being poetic in trying to say before end of February. This export represents income for local farmers, validates the effectiveness of the cluster-based approach, and demonstrates Botswana's ability to meet stringent international quality and standards. Mr. Speaker, manufacturing in turn is being strengthened as the bridge between primary production and exports. Under BTEP, we have prioritized 22 manufacturing projects that are focused on intensive assembly-based manufacturing, resource-based heavy industry, as well as clean technologies and precision manufacturing, linking agriculture, mining, and energy into higher value goods. BTEP is expanding industrial processing and manufacturing capabilities into higher value manufactured goods that retain value within Botswana, deepen supply chains and create skilled employment. This shift, Mr. Speaker, moves our economy decisively up the value chain and reduces vulnerability to external shocks. Mr. Speaker, substantial progress has been made in land servicing and construction of 4 advanced factory units at the SES Retsekgama Airport, SESA, representing a combined investment of 714 million pula. To further strengthen this momentum, government is developing a grain dryer-related facilities at the Pandamatenga SESA at a total cost of 63 million pula to support agro-industrial value chains. Mr. Speaker, the revised National Investment Strategy, scheduled for completion by March 2026, will serve as a key instrument for advancing inclusive and geographically balanced economic growth. The strategy aims to decentralize investment by embedding local economic development approaches, developing district-specific investment profiles, and strengthening competitive value chains. By adopting this context-specific district focus, the strategy aims to reduce existing growth disparities, accelerate development in historically underdeveloped districts, and ensure that all districts advance towards comparable levels of development. Mr. Speaker, implementation nationwide by the Botswana Investment and Trade Center in partnership with local authorities. This approach will enhance private sector participation, it will strengthen business linkages, it will unlock investment opportunities beyond major urban centers and accelerate export growth and economic diversification across all districts. Mr. Speaker, government will continue to strengthen investor facilitation through BITC and the Botswana One-Stop Service Center. Ongoing reforms aimed at simplifying permits, licenses, approvals, and the direct issuance of investor visas will significantly reduce regulatory bottlenecks. It will fast-track project implementation and further enhance Botswana's overall ease of doing business. Mr. Speaker, significant progress has been made to enable the private sector to fully leverage the opportunities presented by the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA agreement. A key milestone in this regard is the completion of a national AFCFTA implementation strategy for Botswana in July 2025. The strategy identifies the country's areas of comparative advantage to support economic diversification while also outlining priority value chains that can be developed to enhance Botswana's trade potential within the AFCFTA framework. This milestone strategically positions Botswana to tap into the vast African market of 1.3 billion people, unlocking opportunities for export diversification, value chain integration, and broader economic gains. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about human capital and social development. Mr. Speaker, strategic focus remains on expanding access to quality education and healthcare, strengthening social protection systems, and enhancing opportunities for broad-based participation in economic activity. This commitment supports the development of a capable and adaptable workforce, promotes social inclusion, and reinforces national resilience. And under BTAP, this focus is being translated into a coordinated pipeline of high-impact social sector projects that fundamentally reposition human capital as the primary driver of productivity, inclusion, and long-term economic resilience. In this regard, BTAP is implementing 54 projects and initiatives across education, healthcare, and social protection, each designed to strengthen the foundation of a productive and resilient society. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about enhancing education. Mr. Speaker, the government has consistently demonstrated a strong commitment to human capital development through substantial investment in education. Botswana allocates 7.1% of GDP to the sector, among the highest levels for upper middle-income countries in the region. However, education outcomes have not kept pace with this level of investment, resulting in a persistent mismatch between spending and performance. This efficiency gap poses a serious constraint on Botswana's long-term growth trajectory. Weak human capital outcomes suppress labor productivity. It limits employability and undermines the country's ability to diversify and shift towards higher value, knowledge-intensive industries. Closing this gap requires improving the efficiency and effectiveness of education spending, ensuring that investments are tightly aligned with labor market demands and skills required in a modern technology-driven economy. Strengthening the impact of education investments is essential to unlocking Botswana's full potential and building a workforce capable of driving sustained economic growth and structural transformation. Mr. Speaker, to elevate the standard of technical and vocational education and training, TVET, we have introduced 3 pivotal instruments. The first, the Tertiary Education Financing Policy, a new Higher Education Act, and a dedicated Technical and Vocational Education and Training Act. This comprehensive legislative and policy framework is designed to modernize governance, enhance quality assurance, expand access, and ensure sustainable funding. Together, these measures will forge an equitable, high-quality, and forward-looking tertiary system, one that directly fuels Botswana's human capital development and drives our long-term economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, complementing this policy reform, the BTAP Education Transformation Program aims to deliver system-wide change through flagship initiatives such as the National Education Blueprint, the TVET revitalization, and the establishment of multidisciplinary TVET centers of excellence. These interventions, Mr. Speaker, align curricula with industry demand, embed digital and green skills, and reposition TVET as a first-choice pathway into productive employment. By 2030, these reforms are expected to have significantly reduced youth unemployment and the rate for those not in employment, education and training, NEET, while supplying industry with job-ready skills critical for economic diversification. I can see Mr. Maele smiling. Further through this, Mr. Speaker, government is committed to elevating the role of TVET graduates by embedding them in strategic functions such as government facility maintenance and fleet operations and the manufacture of protective equipment. This will convert training into practical work experience and demonstrate through real delivery the economic value of vocational training. This initiative ensures that technical skills are harnessed effectively, creating pathways for youth employment while enhancing the capacity of public services and demonstrating the strategic value of vocational training in national development. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about transforming the healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, government continues to invest substantial resources in the healthcare system. However, these expenditures have not yet translated into commensurate improvements in disease outcomes. Analysis shows that a significant share of health spending is driven by diseases that are both costly to treat but largely preventable. To address this challenge, government is shifting healthcare approach toward a stronger primary healthcare system. By prioritizing early detection, timely intervention, and effective prevention, primary healthcare should curb the progression of disease, reduce avoidable hospitalizations, ease pressure on secondary and tertiary facilities, and lower reliance on specialized care. Mr. Speaker, this shift is expected to improve health outcomes while enhancing efficiency and sustainability in healthcare financing. Mr. Speaker, the government has embarked on a comprehensive reform program aimed at transforming the central medical stores into a fully modernized, performance-driven organization in the next financial year. This reform is expected to reduce government expenditure on medical supplies by 30 to 40% within 5 years through improved procurement, through efficiency and digital inventory management, as well as strategic sourcing. The transformation of CMS will significantly strengthen medicine availability, reduce wastage, and enhance the overall resilience of the healthcare system. The legislative process to modernize and strengthen governance and operating model of the CMS will commence before the end of the financial year. Mr. Speaker, government's long-term strategy to achieve universal health coverage and ensure that all Botswana have equitable access to quality health care services without financial hardship is underway. The introduction of the National Health Insurance responds to the growing pressures on the health system, including rising healthcare costs, changing disease patterns, and the need for a more sustainable and predictable health financing model. National policy formulation and extensive stakeholder consultations are ongoing. The resulting national health insurance policy will provide the basis for the National Health Insurance Bill, which is scheduled to be tabled during this current parliamentary sitting. Mr. Speaker, overall, the NHI program will be implemented through a phased approach and is expected to reach full operationalization within approximately 3 years from the policy formulation stage. Mr. Speaker, these reforms are aligned with our broader vision for the future of healthcare, which lies in digital innovation and data-driven decision-making. To that end, government has embarked on transformative reform that leverages digital technologies, AI, telemedicine, and point-of-care tools to strengthen efficiency and access. A key milestone in this regard is the establishment of the National Health Intelligence Center, scheduled for completion before the end of this financial year. This center will serve as a national platform for collecting, processing, and analyzing real-time health data across all levels of health workers in villages to tertiary referral hospitals. This data will provide government with a comprehensive, real-time picture of Botswana's healthcare landscape, enabling evidence-based planning and policy development. This investment marks a significant step toward a future-proof, people-centered, and digitally enabled public healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, a little bit about enhancing social welfare. Mr. Speaker, government is committed to advancing social inclusion by moving beyond welfare dependency and expanding empowerment forecast programs that foster self-reliance, sustainable livelihoods, and meaningful participation in the economy. Mr. Speaker, the Ikageng Public Works Program modernizes and upgrades the former Ipelegeng program into a skills-focused national public works initiative aimed at generating employment, especially for the youth and women, while enhancing community-level productivity. It represents a decisive shift from welfare-based relief to a performance-driven public employment model in which remuneration is linked to productivity, adherence to quality standards, and measurable outputs. Strategically aligned with TVET pathways and labor market requirements, as well as national productivity objectives, this program ensures that participants acquire market-relevant skills that improve their employability or support their transition into sustainable self-employment. Mr. Speaker, through extensive nationwide consultations, Ikageng prioritizes locally identified and economically productive projects in sectors such as agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing, with significant potential for value addition, for job creation, and inclusive growth. This focus, Mr. Speaker, is further strengthened by the Constituency Community Projects, CCP, which advances empowerment, social inclusion, and poverty reduction while supporting local economic development. Together, Ikageng Public Works Program and CCP create a coherent and community-driven development pathway that broadens economic opportunities. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about integrating key infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, government is pursuing a coordinated, high-impact infrastructure investments across energy, water, and transport. Aligned to BTEP's True North, infrastructure is being delivered in an integrated, as an integrated economic enabler, unlocking private investment, supporting diversification, and strengthening Botswana's connectivity to regional and international markets. Under BTEP, we have prioritized 26 infrastructure projects, which will build seamless connections across economic activities to position Botswana as a regional trade and investment hub. Mr. Speaker, to address water supply and sanitation challenges, government continues to expand and upgrade critical water and wastewater infrastructure. Key projects include Lobatse Water Master Plan, Kanye sanitation upgrades to Mama Shia and Molepolle treatment plants, and new water supply schemes in Molepolle, Ramozwa, Letlakane cluster, Maitengwe, and Kalahari. Mr. Speaker, domestic electricity generation currently meets only 63 to 70% of national demand, with imports costing approximately 3.4 billion annually. Government will accelerate implementation of the revised integrated resource plan through new generation projects, independent power producers, and expanded transmission infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, substantial investment continues in roads and transport infrastructure to improve mobility, trade, and access to services. Projects include urban road upgrades in Tlokweng, Mogoditsane, and Maung, the Sesere-Tsakama International Airport Junction dual carriageway, and major road reconstructions such as Mankgodi-Jwaneng and Natagweta. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, government is advancing rail and aviation infrastructure to strengthen regional and international connectivity. Feasibility studies for regional rail links are progressing alongside planned expansions of Maung International Airport and cargo facilities at the Sesere-Tsakama International Airport. These investments, Mr. Speaker, position Botswana as a logistics, tourism, and trade hub within the region, supporting export growth and economic diversification. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about innovation and digital transformation. Mr. Speaker, the Villages Connectivity Program across the country, expansion of optic fiber infrastructure to villages located far from commercial backbone networks and fast-growing settlements are being accelerated. The expansion will not only improve speed and reliability, but make it affordable for households, for schools, for clinics, and for local businesses. Mr. Speaker, government remains steadfast in its commitment to making public services simpler, faster, and accessible. Accordingly, we continue to accelerate the migration of key services onto the integrated e-services platform project, the One Gov One Citizen platform. To date, 52 e-services are available online to the public, while a further 179 public-facing e-services have been developed and are undergoing integration testing, which is expected to be completed by the end of the financial year. These advancements, Mr. Speaker, will reduce queues, shorten processing times, improve service delivery, and create an enabling environment that supports enterprise activity, broad-based participation, and sustained economic expansion. Mr. Speaker, government will expedite the Botswana National Digital Identification System, which is a secure, interoperable digital ID platform. This will enable trusted authentication across public and private services. This reform will improve efficiency, it will reduce duplication, and strengthen the integrity of public systems by enhancing identity verification, combating fraud, and supporting data-driven service delivery. Mr. Speaker, importantly, the digital ID will underpin broader e-government initiatives, supporting digital payments, social service targeting, and financial inclusion. Overall, this initiative represents a foundational investment in digital infrastructure that will strengthen governance, that will improve service delivery, and position Botswana to fully participate in the regional and global digital landscape. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little about macroeconomic performance and outlook. The global economic outlook. Mr. Speaker, global economic conditions remain fragile amidst persistent geopolitical tensions, amidst tightening financial conditions, amidst elevated public debt, amidst climate-related disruptions and sluggish growth. The IMF Fund's January 2026 World Economic Outlook update projects global growth to remain unchanged at 3.3% in both 2025 and 2026. Advanced economies are projected to grow by 1.8% in 2026 from 1.7% in 2025. The World Economic Outlook projects growth in emerging market and developing countries to moderate from 4.4% in 2025 to 4.2% in 2026, reflecting slower momentum in key economies such as China and India. Mr. Speaker, in the sub-Saharan African region, economic activity is projected to strengthen, with growth rising from 4.4% in 2025 to 4.6% in 2026, supported by continued macroeconomic stabilization and reform in major economies, including Nigeria and South Africa. Growth prospects across the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the Southern African Customs Union, SACU, are anticipated to improve modestly during the same period. The SADC region is projected to grow from 2.9% in 2025 to 3% in 2026, while the SACU region is expected to follow a similar trajectory, with output growth increasing from an estimated 1.2% in 2025 to 1.3% in 2026. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about domestic economic developments. Economic growth and outlook, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the domestic economy is estimated to have contracted by 2.8% in 2024, largely due to sharp slowdown in diamond-related activities, compounded by limited economic diversification. This contraction, Mr. Speaker, is expected to persist into 2025, with growth projected at minus 0.4%. The latest estimates from the statistics of Botswana indicate that the economy remains sluggish after averaging 0.9% in the first 3 quarters of 2025. The non-mining sector provided limited support as key industries such as manufacturing, transport and storage, and construction slowed, reflecting the economy's strong dependence on diamond-financed government spending. Mr. Speaker, the domestic economy is estimated to rebound to 3.1% in 2026. However, in the absence of decisive structural reforms, growth is likely to remain below potential in the short to medium term. These developments underscore the urgent need to accelerate economic diversification and strengthen non-mining sources of growth as outlined in the BTAP. Total factor productivity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a key concern for Botswana's economic outlook is the persistent weakness in total factor productivity, particularly in the non-mining private sector. Total factor productivity growth in 2024 was minus 1%, down from 0.3% in 2023, reflecting inefficiencies in the use of capital and labor, slowing capital accumulation, and weak employment growth. Prior to this, Mr. Speaker, total factor productivity growth had recorded modest gains in 2021 and 2022, largely driven by post-COVID base effects. Inadequate infrastructure maintenance has reduced overall return on capital. Government remains steadfast in tackling these structural challenges by reducing its footprint in the economy and accelerating private sector-led growth through the implementation of BTAP, coupled with the prioritization of infrastructure maintenance, strengthening of skills development, streamlining of regulation, and enhancing productivity across value chains, providing time-bound pathway to economic diversification. A little bit, Mr. Speaker, about inflation, monetary policy, rate, and the financial sector. Mr. Speaker, inflation remained relatively subdued in 2025. As of December 2025, annual inflation stood at 3.9% compared to 1.7% in December 2024. Looking ahead, Mr. Speaker, inflation is expected to rise in 2026, temporarily breaching the upper limit of 3 to 6% objective range by mid-year, then moderate back within the band in the latter part of the year. In response to the low inflationary environment, the Bank of Botswana kept the monetary policy rate unchanged at 3.5% in December 2025, following its earlier increase from 1.9% to 3.5% in October 2025. This policy stance, Mr. Speaker, was aimed at strengthening monetary policy transmission, particularly through the effective use of monetary operation tools and the management of market liquidity. Mr. Speaker, according to the Financial Stability Council's report released in November 2025, the domestic financial system remains resilient and continues to produce financial services to households and businesses without significant constraints. However, the Council noted the persistence of macro-financial risks, including subdued economic activity, including liquidity distribution challenges, including climate-related vulnerabilities and sector-specific weaknesses. The Council emphasized that these risks require continued vigilance and, in some cases, proactive policy interventions. And in this regard, government will, in the near term, continue to implement measures to enhance liquidity, strengthen market functioning, both of which are critical to supporting credit conditions and safeguarding financial stability. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we will address and we will have to address the growing household indebtedness and its associated risks by fostering a robust culture of savings and long-term investment among citizens. This will be further supported by measures to strengthen financial literacy from an early age, thereby equipping future generations with knowledge and skills necessary for sound economic decision-making. Mr. Speaker, a little bit about external sector and foreign exchange reserves. Mr. Speaker, the external sector remained under significant pressure in 2025, with the merchandise trade account recording a cumulative deficit of 15.32 billion between January and November 2025. This deterioration was a major contributor to the widening current account deficit, driven primarily by weak export earnings, alongside elevated import demand for essential commodities such as fuel and food. The overall outlook for 2025 suggests a persistence of external imbalances, reflecting subdued diamond export receipts and continued demand for critical imports. Mr. Speaker, consequently, conditions in the foreign exchange market have tightened. Official foreign exchange reserve declined from 48.1 billion in December 2024, which is 6 months of import cover, to 47.4 billion in December 2025, which is 5 months of import cover. This trajectory, Mr. Speaker, is increasingly unsustainable and poses mounting risks to macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker, to address these vulnerabilities and safeguard reserve adequacy, the exchange rate policy framework was recalibrated in July 2025 and January 2026. These measures were also designed to deepen the interbank foreign exchange market and support the sustainability of external balances. Their impact has been clearly positive. And as reflected by a reduction in the Bank of Botswana's foreign exchange sales to commercial banks from a monthly average of over 4 billion to 3 billion. This development is consistent with our objective of safeguarding foreign exchange reserves and indicates a more efficient and market-responsive foreign exchange environment. The interbank trading activity has also strengthened, Mr. Speaker, with transactions rising from 3.2 billion in the third quarter of 2025 up from 2.4 billion in the previous quarter, signaling improved market depth and liquidity following the policy adjustments. Mr. Speaker, without these interventions, projections show that the pace of reserve depletion would have exhausted our foreign exchange holdings completely, and I mean completely, by the first half of 2026. Further adjustments, Mr. Speaker, in January 2026 included reducing the Bank of Botswana foreign exchange buy rate from 7.5% to 3% relative to central parity, while maintaining the sell rate at minus 7.5%. The introduction of asymmetric trading margins strengthens export competitiveness by enabling exporters to receive more pula per unit of foreign currency and support foreign exchange reserve accumulation. The downward crawl rate was maintained at 7.6%, and the pula currency basket weights remained unchanged at 50% for South African rand and 50% for the special drawing rights. Mr. Speaker, overall, these adjustments are expected to continue supporting external sustainability, preserving official reserves, and reinforcing the resilience of the exchange rate regime while maintaining policy flexibility. Mr. Speaker, a little bit about net financial asset position. Mr. Speaker, persistent budget deficits in recent years have increased government's financing needs and led to a substantial depletion of the government investment account, leaving limited room for further drawdowns. Combined with a sharp decline in revenue inflows, this has reduced the GIA to historically low and unsustainable levels. As at November 2025, the GIA stood at 2.91 billion, far below the historical peak of 37.2 billion recorded in 2014, severely constraining government's ability to rely on reserves to finance future deficits. The government net financial asset position has deteriorated significantly over the past 2 decades. In 2008, Mr. Speaker, the NFA stood at roughly 40% of GDP, but by 2024 had shifted to a negative 30.1% of GDP, reflecting a substantial drawdown of fiscal buffers and increased reliance on debt financing. This underscores, Mr. Speaker, the need for sustained fiscal consolidation through strengthening revenue mobilization and prudent expenditure containment. Restoring a positive net asset position would not only enhance macro fiscal stability, but would also support sovereign creditworthiness. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, government will continue to implement its fiscal strategy focused on rebuilding financial buffers, enhancing the economy's capacity to absorb shocks, and ensuring long-term fiscal and debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, these measures will be implemented in a disciplined and gradualist manner to ensure that public debt and debt service risks are within prudent and sustainable thresholds. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about medium-term fiscal outlook. Mr. Speaker, given the current global and domestic economic condition, the medium-term fiscal outlook has been revised downward, underscoring the urgency of strengthening fiscal and external buffers and maintaining policy credibility. The macro-fiscal environment remains challenging, with declining mineral revenues, rising expenditure pressures, and growing requirements for social and economic support, and all of these placing strain on the fiscal position. Government remains committed to a coordinated fiscal consolidation strategy aimed at restoring fiscal sustainability, rebuilding fiscal buffers, and safeguarding macroeconomic stability. Key consolidation measures include expenditure prioritization, enhancing the efficiency of public spending, strengthening domestic revenue mobilization, and advancing SOE reforms. These efforts, Mr. Speaker, will be implemented in a balanced and growth-supportive manner, ensuring the protection of essential social spending and the safeguarding of critical investments that drive economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about risks to the macro fiscal outlook. Mr. Speaker, the medium-term outlook is subject to significant macro fiscal risks. Externally, slower global growth, continued weaknesses in the diamond market, volatile commodity prices, heightened geopolitical tensions, and climate-related shocks could prolong the recovery. It could also widen both fiscal and current account deficits and undermine efforts to build fiscal and external buffers. Domestically, risks to growth remain skewed to the downside, with economic growth likely to stay below potential if diamond market does not recover. Mr. Speaker, while the non-diamond sector may continue to cushion the economy from a deeper contraction, its stabilizing effect is inherently limited. In addition, delays in containing the foot-and-mouth disease outbreak could result in severe production losses, higher livestock mortality, adversely affecting smallholder farmers, reducing beef export receipts, and posing risks to national food security. A slower than anticipated implementation of BTAP would further hinder progress on economic diversification and the transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, on the fiscal front, revenue risks are mounting as mineral earnings are projected to remain well below long-term averages, with only modest upside from potential price adjustments. Mr. Speaker, this persistent shortfall is widening fiscal gaps and is intensifying financial pressures. Expenditure risks also remain elevated as both recurrent and capital spending continue to outpace revenue growth. Without a credible fiscal consolidation or structural deficits are likely to persist, increasing reliance on borrowing, and consequently, debt vulnerabilities are becoming more pronounced, with rising financial needs are placing public debt on a steeper trajectory. Although debt levels remain within statutory limits, sustained fiscal slippage would undermine debt sustainability and heighten the economy's exposure to future shocks. Other risks to the outlook include rising inflation pressures, climate-related disruptions, SOE fiscal risks, and vulnerabilities arising from weak implementation of PPP projects, cybersecurity threats, and shocks to food and energy prices. Mr. Speaker, all these could further weaken growth prospects and strain fiscal and external balances. Mr. Speaker, to mitigate these risks, government will, among others, strengthen fiscal risk management, enhance policy coordination, and accelerate economic diversification and private sector-led growth to support a more resilient, diversified, and sustainable economy. Mr. Speaker, advancing diversification, deepening private sector participation, and boosting productivity remain central to mitigating emerging risks and securing long-term fiscal and economic sustainability. Sustained medium-term growth will require accelerated implementation, economy-wide reforms across key sectors, given their potentially catalytic impact on productivity and competitiveness. In addition, expenditure measures aimed at containing the public wage bill, simplifying and better targeting social benefits, and improving the governance and operational efficiency of SOEs are warranted to deepen fiscal discipline and strengthen the overall macro-fiscal framework, as well as a better cost-effective execution of large government infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, let me say a little bit about our fiscal strategy. Mr. Speaker, the 2026-2027 fiscal strategy places fiscal consolidation, discipline, and the building of buffers at the center of our policy approach. We will broaden our revenue base, enhance compliance, and improve the efficiency of our tax administration, while ensuring that public spending is firmly aligned with national priorities, anchored on value for money, accountability, and results. Together, these reforms will strengthen debt sustainability, restore fiscal resilience, and advance economic transformation in a manner that is both inclusive and sustainable. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about strengthening domestic revenue mobilization. Mr. Speaker, every nation, and I mean every nation, needs adequate revenue to provide services effectively, and everyone has a responsibility to contribute their fair share. Taxation is not a form of punishment, Mr. Speaker. Taxation is not a form of punishment, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honorable Mr. Speaker. It is a collective investment in our shared development. It is about improving revenue performance, and it is not simply improving our revenue performance is not simply about raising tax rates. It is primarily about deploying smarter systems and building the institutional capacity required for effective revenue mobilization. Government remains committed to maintaining relatively low tax rates, but will act pragmatically when circumstances demand. In this context, a well-designed tax policy becomes fundamental to sustaining a healthy and competitive economy. In Botswana, the need for a comprehensive tax reform has never been more urgent. According to the 2025 OECD report, Botswana's tax to GDP ratio declined by 0.4% from 13.8% in 2022 to 13.4% in 2023, remaining below the African average of 16.1% and significantly lower than the SACU average of 20.5%. Mr. Speaker, these comparatively low levels of domestic revenue mobilization highlight the necessity of modernizing our core tax systems to improve efficiency address under-taxed activities, improve revenue collection efficiency, strengthen compliance, and broaden our tax base. International experience further demonstrates what is achievable. For example, in Morocco, Morocco has realized substantial gains in its tax to GDP ratio, reaching 28.5% in 2023 through sustained reforms aimed at strengthening tax administration and compliance, broadening the tax base, rationalizing tax exemptions, and digitizing tax declarations. Mr. Speaker, Botswana has already embarked on a similar reform trajectory. The Value-Added Tax Act of 2025 represents a major step in enhancing revenue mobilization and modernizing the tax framework. The Act introduces VAT on remote services and mandates electronic invoicing, thereby aligning Botswana with international best practice. Implementation is progressing well, supported by extensive stakeholder consultations and ongoing system upgrades to facilitate the registration and compliance of remote service providers. The rollout of electronic invoicing, which is anticipated in April 2026, will enable real-time transaction monitoring. It will strengthen compliance, it will reduce leakages, and significantly enhance revenue assurance as part of the broader digital transformation of our tax administration. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, the government is advancing a comprehensive, multi-year legislative and operational reform agenda. During this February sitting of Parliament, 4 key pieces of legislation will be presented to this hallowed house, namely the Value-Added Tax Bill 2025, the Income Tax Bill 2025, the Customs Amendment Bill 2025, and the New Tax Administration Bill 2025. This holistic review seeks to modernize and harmonize the tax framework. It seeks to simplify procedural and administrative provisions and ensure full alignment with the New Tax Administration Act. Mr. Speaker, in the 2025 budget speech, government proposed a 1.5% increase in corporate income tax and in the last bracket of the personal income tax. Following this announcement, we received extensive feedback from stakeholders, particularly regarding the definition and perceived fairness of the top earner threshold. Government took this feedback seriously and therefore paused implementation of the measures to allow for deeper reflection, refinement, and further consultation. As a result, the revised top earner threshold is now proposed at 400,000 pula and above per annum, which will attract Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Speaker, an additional 2.5% tax. Additional proposals include increasing the corporate income tax rate by 3% and reducing the zero-rated list to raise the effective VAT rate. Detailed provisions of each bill will be elaborated during the forthcoming parliamentary debate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we remain firmly committed to to deepening and broadening consultation. As part of this effort, government will convene a expenditure, bringing together business, labor, civil society, technical experts, and the general public to deliberately gather practical insights, lived experiences, and technical perspectives that may extend beyond what is immediately visible to us as policy makers. This inclusive engagement, Mr. Speaker, will support the design of a more effective, growth-friendly tax laws and operational infrastructure that minimize economic distortions, strengthen efficiency, and build public confidence. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about public expenditure efficiency. Mr. Speaker, closing efficiency gaps can raise long-term output in emerging and developing economies by up to 7.5%, while countries that act decisively on these reforms typically secure 30 to 40% more value for money through stronger public expenditure management. The solution is not a blanket spending cut. International experience shows that an across-the-board reductions can disrupt essential services. They can undermine efficiency, and they can indeed choke economic growth. Instead, building on reforms reaffirmed in the 2025 midterm budget review, government will pursue a more strategic and targeted approach, one that identifies and eliminates inefficiencies, one that reallocates resources where conditions allow and ensures that every pula delivers measurable economic and social returns. To support this shift, service delivery will be strengthened through expanded use of digital tools and that streamline public finance operations, enhance cash management practices, and modernize procurement systems. Mr. Speaker, combating corruption remains fundamental to improving spending efficiency. These efforts will be anchored in a strengthened medium-term fiscal framework that supports a credible fiscal consolidation path. In addition, Mr. Speaker, MDAs and local authorities will be required to align their financial practices with enhanced oversight and control frameworks. This includes strict compliance with financial regulations, transparent and competitive procurement practices, prudent management of public resources, and robust internal controls. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about public finance management reforms. Mr. Speaker, I wish to share with you the progress on key areas of accounting and reporting: public procurement, public investment management, and national budgeting, which I highlighted in my previous speech. Mr. Speaker, while progress has been slower than anticipated, we are focused on completing the transition from cash to accrual accounting. The adoption of full accrual accounting will enable the preparation of government's first balance sheet, strengthening fiscal transparency, improving asset and liability management, and positioning Botswana to mobilize financing more efficiently in support of sustainable economic growth. As I've already indicated, Mr. Speaker, the rollout of a national e-procurement system represents a major step forward The system will standardize and digitize procurement processes across central government, local authorities, and SOEs, reducing cycle times and improving competition and compliance. Mr. Speaker, over the years, while the country has invested significantly in infrastructure and development projects, gaps remain in how public investments are planned, how they are appraised, how they are implemented, and how they are monitored. Weaknesses in project selection, weaknesses in delays in execution, weaknesses in cost overruns have limited the overall impact of public spending on growth and service delivery. Waste as a result of these deficiencies is not only significant, it is immense. We will therefore leverage on the public investment management reform to improve the appraisal, the selection, and the execution of capital projects through rigorous cost-benefit analysis. Further to this, Mr. Speaker, we have also begun the mid-year spending reviews, now integrated into the budget process, to identify spending inefficiencies, assess the effectiveness of public programs, and guide informed budget reallocation decisions. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to start talking about budget performance. 2024-25 financial year budget outturn, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there has not been much change in the 2024-2025 financial year budget outturn since I delivered the 2025 mid-year budget review statement. Preliminary estimates indicate that 2024-2025 financial year point to a lower fiscal deficit of 19.01 billion, which is 7.25% of GDP, compared to a projected deficit of 24.73 billion, or 9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, total revenues and grants for 2024-2025 financial year amounted to 69.61 billion pula, compared to 68.69 billion pula in the revised budget. Total expenditure and net lending is estimated at 88.62 billion pula, which is lower than the revised budget of 93.42 billion pula, due to cost-saving interventions implemented during the year. Mr. Speaker, 2025-2026 financial year revised budget estimates. Mr. Speaker, since the mid-year budget review, updated information indicates that the fiscal position for the 2025-2026 financial year is broadly expected to remain unchanged, with the deficit estimated at 25.48 billion pula. Total revenue and grants have been revised downwards to 71.22 billion pula from 75.49 billion pula in the original budget. The revision primarily reflects a decline in mineral revenue, which has decreased from 15.75 billion pula to 12.06 billion pula. Mr. Speaker, SACU revenue has been revised upwards by 631.1 million pula from 24.36 billion in the original budget to 24.99 billion, while VAT revenue has increased by 1.62 billion from 12.1 billion. to 13.71 billion. Non-mineral income tax, Mr. Speaker, has been revised downward by 2.69 billion pula from 19.01 billion in the original budget to 16.32 billion. Profits from Bank of Botswana, if any, will be communicated at the appropriate time. Should such profits materialize, they would provide an important additional revenue stream, helping to ease fiscal pressures and narrow the fiscal deficit. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure and net lending have been revised downwards to 96.7 billion pula from the original budget of 97.61 billion pula. Of this amount, Mr. Speaker, recurrent expenditure estimates are maintained at their original budget levels, while development expenditure estimates have been revised downward by 903.32 million to 22.85 billion pula. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say a little bit about 2026-2027 financial year budget proposals. Mr. Speaker, I will now present the second budget proposals for the 13th Parliament, that is, the 2026-2027 financial year budget proposals. Total revenue and grants. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants for the financial year 2026-2027 are projected at 77.22 billion pula. SACU receipts are expected to remain the largest revenue source at 26.79 billion pula, followed by non-mineral revenue income tax, which is forecast at 19.76 billion pula. VAT collections are expected to be third largest contributor at 15.10 billion pula. Mineral revenue is projected to broadly remain the same at 12.21 billion pula. The remaining 3.36 billion pula is expected to come from other revenues and grants. Total expenditure and net lending. Mr. Speaker, the total expenditure and net lending is projected at a 103.58 billion pula for the financial year 2026-2027. Of this amount, total recurrent expenditure is expected to reach 80.32 billion pula, reflecting the government's ongoing commitment to operations and service delivery. Development expenditure is estimated at 23.38 billion pula, while net lending is minus 121.92 million pula. Statutory expenditure. Mr. Speaker, total statutory expenditure for financial year 2026-2027 is estimated at 27.26 billion pula, representing a 20% increase from the revised allocation of 22.70 in the 2025-2026 financial year. This provision covers government statutory obligations, including public debt servicing, pension contribution for civil servants, and other statutory commitments. The allocation towards pensions, gratuities, and compensations is primarily driven by the recalculated transfer of 5 billion pula for members of the Botswana Defence Force, an amount of 673.6 million pula required to rectify transactions related to government's capital injection into DBS, an obligation initially settled directly through the Bank of Botswana in 2019, as well as the anticipated contribution arrears of 5 million pula for C-band employees arising from a Court of Appeal judgment on multiple grading of the positions. Mr. Speaker, ministerial recurrent expenditure. Mr. Speaker, the proposed ministerial recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2026-2027 amounts to 67.78 billion pula, representing an increase of 1.8 billion pula or 2.8% over the approved budget of 65.95 billion pula for the 2025-2026 financial year. The growth is primarily driven by additional budgetary provision, including 802.82 million for tuition fees for new and continuing students, as well as the re-sponsorships, 560.62 million for salary incremental creep, and 542 million pula to accommodate housing and upkeep allowances for public service employees at the level of A3 to D1 in line with the collective labor agreement between the government and the unions. Further allocations include 337.17 million pula for the termination allowances and 154.89 million pula for staff costs for temporary teachers, the establishment of key national initiatives, namely the National Health Insurance at 77.81 million pula and 35.7 million pula for the Mineral Exploration Company. Furthermore, 57.47 million has been allocated to address funding shortfalls in the Department of Correctional Services, while 15.85 million has been provided for absorption of special constables. Mr. Speaker, the largest share of the proposed ministerial recurrent budget is allocated to the Ministry of State President, Defense and Security. This represents 13.05 billion, an increase of 502.77 million, or 4.01% over this year's approved budget. The allocation largely covers operational requirements of the BDF and the Botswana Police Service, reflecting government's continued commitment to safeguarding national security. The proposed budget will also finance the absorption of special constables into regular constable cadre, as well as procurement of their uniforms. In addition, Mr. Speaker, provisions have been made for the termination allowances, service charges, and static plant under the Directorate of Corruption and Economic Crime. The National AIDS and Health Promotion Agency, NAPA, has been transferred back to the Ministry of Health following the rescission of the earlier decision to transfer it to the ministry from State President, Defense and Security. Mr. Speaker, the second largest share of the proposed ministerial recurrent budget is allocated to the Ministry of Local Government and Traditional Affairs, amounting to 12.99 billion pula. This represents an increase of 1.7 billion pula, or 15.2%, compared to the allocation for the previous financial budget. The substantial allocation underscores government's commitment to strengthening social development and enhancing service delivery within local government structures and traditional affairs. The allocation is intended to improve the ministry's operational capacity, ensuring effective functionality and sustained provisions of essential services to communities across the breadth of Botswana. The significant growth is primarily attributable to the transfer of funding from the Ministry of Health to support the primary health care function, which was reassigned to the Ministry of Local Government and Traditional Affairs as part of the 2024 rationalization of ministerial portfolios. Mr. Speaker, further, a substantial portion of the budget is also allocated to the social welfare programs, which continue to experience significant growth. These include the Destitute Allowances, Old Age Pension Scheme, Orphan Care Program, and the newly introduced Sanitary Wear Support Initiative for Mothers and Babies, scheduled for rollout in the budget year. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard the integrity of these programs and ensure that resources reach the most deserving beneficiaries, it is recommended that the ministry should conduct a proxy means testing within the social protection framework. This will improve the identification of eligible recipients and minimize instances of double dipping. The Revenue Support Grant RSG will likewise continue to receive increased subvention in response to rising demands. However, Mr. Speaker, to mitigate escalating pressures on the RSG, local authorities are urged to expedite the review of valuation of properties in districts such as Gaolathe and Palape. Mr. Speaker, the third largest share of the proposed budget is allocated to the Ministry of Child Welfare and Basic Education, amounting to 11.83 billion. This is an increase of 147.85 million, or 1.3% over the current year's approved budget. The proposed allocation will cover teachers' salaries and allowances, the development and implementation of child welfare policies and programs, the payment of service charges in schools, and the operationalization costs of SOEs under the ministry. It also provides for temporary teaching staff necessitated by the expansion of schools. The ministry is encouraged to consider absorbing the temporary teachers to ensure continuity and stability in the affected schools. The budget will also cater for service charges for the Department of Secondary Education, as well as funding to the pilot project Bula Buka. This initiative, undertaken jointly with the Botswana Open University College and Open Schooling and the Youth Empowerment Education Trust, aims to expand educational access, provide skills training, build character among out-of-school junior certificate leavers, and offer remediation opportunities to Botswana General Certificate of Secondary Education leavers. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health has been allocated the fourth largest share of the proposed budget, amounting to 7.51 billion pula, representing 16.4% decline over the current year's approved budget. The decline in the ministry's budget is mainly attributed to the transfer of personnel-related funds to the Ministry of Local Government and Traditional Affairs following the reassignment of the primary health care function during the 2024 rationalization of ministerial portfolios. Mr. Speaker, the proposed budget will cover essential health sector requirements, including procurement of drugs, vaccines, laboratory supplies, equipment, as well as medical and surgical equipment. It will also cover public officers' medical aid scheme and fees for medical specialists. The proposed budget further includes funding for NAPA and provision for the establishment of the National Health Insurance. Mr. Speaker, the fifth largest share of the proposed budget is allocated to the Ministry of Higher Education, with a total of 7.37 billion pula, representing an increase of 2.7 billion pula, or 58% over the current year's budget allocation. The bulk of the budget covers tuition fees, now transferred from the Ministry of Finance, alongside student allowances and operational costs for SOEs under this ministry. The significant growth in the allocation is primarily due to increased provisions for tuition fees to accommodate the rising number of new tertiary students. The budget also includes funding transferred from the Ministry of Child Welfare and Basic Education to support the running costs of services relocated during ministerial restructuring. A key issue for consideration is the administration of the tuition fees vote, which was temporarily assigned to the Ministry of Finance in the 2022-23 financial year as a spending containment measure. The Ministry of Higher Education has now confirmed its readiness to resume management of this vote, hence the proposal to transfer back to the ministry. The ministry has also highlighted persistent challenges in the recovery of tertiary education student loans, particularly due to difficulties in accessing employment data for graduates, especially those in the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture has been allocated the sixth largest share of the proposed budget, amounting to 2.41 billion pula, representing a decline of 28.34 million, or 1.2%, compared to the current year's approved budget. The reduction is primarily due to scaling down of subventions to SOEs under the ministry. Despite the modest decline, the proposed budget remains strategically aligned to national priorities aimed at enhancing food security through support for agricultural production, through support for promoting self-reliance by empowering farmers, strengthening extension services, and investing in climate-resilient farming practices. The allocation further supports initiatives to expand employment opportunities across agricultural value chain. In addition, the proposed budget provides the continued formulation, implementation, monitoring, and management of land policies to ensure equitable access to land, enhance productivity, and promote sustainable land use. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure has been allocated the seventh largest share of the proposed budget, amounting to 1.93 billion pula. It represents a decrease of 7.98 million or 0.4% compared to the current year's approved budget. The bulk of the allocation, Mr. Speaker, will cater for the procurement of fuel, oil, and lubricants required to operate the entire central government vehicle fleet. The budget also provides for subscriptions to International Maritime Organization and subvention to SOEs, with Civil Aviation Authority receiving the largest share of the ministry's envelope. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Trade and Entrepreneurship is allocated the 8th largest share of proposed ministerial recurrent budget, amounting to 1.2 billion pula. This represents an increase of 30.35 million pula, or 3% increase over the current year's budget. The proposed budget mainly covers operational costs for SOEs under the ministry. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance has been allocated the ninth largest share of proposed budget, with an allocation amounting, Mr. Speaker, to only 1.14 billion pula. This reflects a significant decline of 1.92 billion pula, or 62.68% compared to the current year's approved budget, largely due to the transfer of tuition fees vote back to the Ministry of Higher Education. The major cost drivers within the recommended budget include transfers to SOEs and maintenance obligations. The proposed budget also provides for the establishment of a National Coordination Office to strengthen national efforts in combating anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism in alignment with international standards. This office will play a key role, Mr. Speaker, in facilitating Botswana's participation in the third round of mutual evaluation scheduled for 2027. Mr. Speaker, the allocation also includes provisions for the establishment of the Banking Tribunal in accordance with the new Banking Act and its accompanying regulations, which came into effect in August 2025. Mr. Speaker, the remaining share of the ministerial recurrent budget allocation, meaning the others, is a budget allocation of 8.12 billion pula, or 12%, has been recommended to be shared among other ministries and extra-ministerial departments. The development budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the proposed development budget expenditure for the financial year 2026-2027 amounts to 23.38 billion pula, which is 0.37 billion or 1.5% lower than the approved budget of 23.75 billion pula for the 2025-2026 financial year. The development budget continues to prioritize the maintenance and consolidation of existing infrastructure, with emphasis placed on projects that offer high return on investment. Mr. Speaker, the largest share of the proposed ministerial development budget, amounting to 5.23 billion pula, or 22.36% of the total budget, is recommended for the Ministry of Minerals and Energy. The provision is intended to cover several critical allocations, including 2.27 billion for
for BPC power imports, 730 million to meet the loan obligation to the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, 200 million for the cross-border electricity supply project, and 100 million for the power distribution network reinforcement. These allocations, Mr. Speaker, reflect the ministry's strategic focus on stabilizing electricity supply, honoring national commitments linked to Murupule B power plant, and strengthening the resilience of the national grid, and amid rising demand of regional supply constraints. Mr. Speaker, among the major projects of 2026-2027 is the Northwest Transmission Grid Phase 2, budgeted at 1.37 billion pula. This strategic transmission backbone will connect the Chobe district, enable electricity export into Zizabona market. The ministry also prioritizes rural village electrification and network extension aimed at expanding access to electricity in underserved communities, as well as the integrated resource plan, which targets achieving 50% renewable energy contribution by 2030. Mr. Speaker, in addition, to safeguard the security of petroleum product supply, which is critical for sustaining economic growth and national stability, the government is implementing two projects, namely the expansion of the Francistown and Hansi petroleum depots, both scheduled for commissioning in April and August 2026, respectively. Mr. Speaker, the second largest share of the proposed development budget, amounting to 3.86 billion pula, or 16.52%, is proposed to be allocated to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. This allocation supports government's commitment of transforming Botswana into a regional transport hub by improving the national roads network and advancing the development of strategic alternative railway lines, including the Mamabula-Lephalale railway line and the Mosetsi-Kazungula-Livingston line as part of SADC's strategic plan of the North-South corridor. Mr. Speaker, a total of 3.02 billion pula is earmarked for the following ongoing roads projects: output and performance-based roads contract, monitoring consultancy, the traffic signal modernization and centralized traffic control for Greater Gaborone, Botswana Integrated Transport Project, Mankgodi Jwaneng, Rakuna Mabula, including Good Hope, Horo Khatani Road, revision of Botswana Road Design Manual, Mandunyani Matangwani Road, Motopi Makalamabedi Road, New Kadi Junction to New Kadi Road, Radisele Patch, Tamakakubum, Mushopa Manyana, Mokolodi Access Road, Tihawana Molapabujang, Komukasitwa, Mahotranin Chante Road, Burobadilepe, Hebron, Mukatako with access road to Lahagani, Pihetswani and Malete, Kadai access road, Mabule Sukutlani Road, Muhembo Bridge, Charles Hill, Ngojani, Maung, Nata Maung reconstruction, Nata Gweta section reconstruction, Francistown Nata reconstruction, reconstruction of Nata Ngwasha Gate section, Pandamatenge, construction of Mogoditsane Gabane Mankgodi Road, design, construction, and supervision of Mudipani Mabalani Road, design of Block 8 and Airport Junction interchanges, supervision and construction, Block 8 Junction, Palape Martins Drift, reconstruction, and so on. Funds will also cover road projects at design stage, such as access to CBD and those at pre-contract, such as the A1 Jualing Road and the Midiel and Tau Road. The budget will also cover new road infrastructure projects, such as mobile weighbridge, establishment of a national road agency, Martins Drift Bridge reconstruction of Kokota, Tsabo, McCarthy Rust, and reconstruction of Dikabe Alerala under BTAP. The budget will also finance a range of built infrastructure projects, including refurbishment of Tonota College of Education, Mulepulle College of Education, Department of Building Maintenance area offices in Gaborone West, Department of Building Maintenance area offices Broadest, DRTS Ruwe office, and refurbishment of old supplies in Gaborone. In addition, part of the ministry's allocation will support the implementation of rail and aviation infrastructure, ICT projects, and Air Botswana finances projects. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Water and Human Settlement has been allocated the third largest share of the development budget, amounting to 3.62 billion pula, or 15.50% of the development budget. The ministry's budget allocation prioritizes ongoing projects and completion of major water supply and sanitation projects, including the North-South Carrier Pipeline, Mamashia Water Treatment Plant, Mulepulle, Khamununyani, NSC Connection, Lobatse Water Supply Master Plan, Kanye and Kanye Sanitation. These projects are in their final stages and require settlement for final accounts to ensure their timely closure. The ministry also places emphasis on water and sanitation network projects such as the urgent refurbishment and expansion of the Mambo Wastewater Treatment Plant in Francistown, Maung Water and Sanitation Phase 2, together with new water supply pipeline projects, namely Kalahari North Water Supply, Mulepulle Water Supply and Distribution, which are critical for expanding access and improved service delivery across communities. Mr. Speaker, in addition, 702.96 million pula is earmarked for social housing projects, including the Bonno Turnkey Development Scheme, Bonno Home Improvement Scheme, and Bonno D4 and below public officers housing scheme. The fourth largest share of the proposed development budget of 2.86 billion pula, or 12.22%, has been allocated to the Ministry of Local Government and Traditional Affairs. This allocation will support the implementation of the social welfare programs, local government infrastructure, the development of primary education services, tribal administration infrastructure, development programs, and primary healthcare services. The social welfare programs accounting for 69.9% of the total ministry budget, such as Ikaheng program, constituency community projects, destitute program, remote area development, and the BTEP Kwena empowerment program will also be catered for. To enhance efficiency and reduce duplication across intervention, there is an urgent need to accelerate the rollout of the single social registry, proxy means testing, as a targeting tool. The SSR project will be supported by the World Bank, which will undertake an assessment to identify bottlenecks, improve system performance, and enhance citizen experience. The local government infrastructure component, Mr. Speaker, will mainly cover projects such as the construction of the 9-kilometer road from Mopane to Block 8 in Gaborone, supported through a grant from the Chinese government. Other projects to be implemented include the maintenance of internal roads and construction of a bus terminal in Molepulle. The fifth largest share of development budget is allocated to the Ministry of State, President, Defense and Security, with an amount of 1.99 billion pula, or 8.55% of the total. The bulk of this allocation, that is 56.2%, is directed towards the country's security organs. The budget also provides 60 million pula for the establishment of rehabilitation centers at Maung and Lobatse under the Drug Enforcement Agency. The Ministry of Lands and Agriculture is proposed to be allocated the sixth largest budget allocation of 1.77 billion pula, representing 7.59% of the development budget. The budget is intended for projects and programs aimed at enhancing agricultural productivity, strengthening food security, and promoting sustainable farming practices that ensure long-term prosperity for Botswana. The bulk of the budget will mainly support the ongoing land management projects such as the Metsimohlabe Block 4, Hanzi Expansion Block 1 to 7, Sesretsekgama International Airport SESA, as well as the Tloane-Mankgodi Road, which was transferred from the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. The budget will also provide for emerging national priorities and pronouncements, including cannabis production and regulatory framework. In addition, the budget also provides for the ministry's SOEs, including the Botswana Agricultural Marketing Board and the Botswana Vaccine Institute and the Botswana Meat Commission. Mr. Speaker, in addition, government continues to support the country's food security and agricultural export efforts through the livestock subsidy and the input subsidy programs. In light of increasing climatic shocks, priority is being placed on investing in agricultural value chains and advancing commercialization of both arable and livestock production. To this end, the adoption of modern farming technologies, development of agro-industries, and expansion of green energy solutions have become critical to enhancing the sector productivity. Mr. Speaker, as part of broader efforts to diversify the economy through agriculture, government is implementing a policy shift intended to enable regulated cultivation and use of industrial hemp and medicinal cannabis. This initiative will be implemented in phases, beginning with trials at the Botswana University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and progressively expanding to Botswana farmers who demonstrate interest and capacity to participate in these emerging value chains. Mr. Speaker, the 4.05 billion pula, representing 17.32% of the development budget, is being allocated across the rest of the ministries. I didn't say others, I said the rest of the ministries and departments. This provision will cater for, among others, construction and refurbishment of education, health and other government facilities countrywide, investment in innovation and research and development, national retail payment switch, MIT Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program, as well as other projects. Mr. Speaker, let me talk about the overall budget and its financing. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal outlook for the financial year 2026-2027 anticipates an overall budget deficit of 26.35 billion pula, equivalent to 8.9% of GDP. The financing strategy for this deficit is expected to draw on a mix of domestic and external borrowing. However, external resource mobilization has become increasingly constrained, resulting in a greater reliance on domestic debt instruments and leaving significant financing gap. Total financing requirements are estimated at 22.3 billion pula, of which 18.6 billion pula remains unfinanced. Mr. Speaker, this reflects a structurally overstretched fiscal framework in which expenditure commitments persistently exceed available and realizable resources. Such misalignment is fiscally unsustainable in the long term, over the medium to long term, and underscores the urgent need for more credible, more disciplined, and more prudent fiscal planning. Failure to secure the required financing affordably, which failure will not happen, will inevitably lead to the accumulation of arrears, an adjustment mechanism deferment rather than a resolution of the underlying fiscal obligation. Either outcome would increase the public debt burden, raise debt service costs, and intensify pressures on our fiscus. Public service management. Public debt management. Mr. Speaker, during the 25-26 financial year, the budget was largely financed through domestic market. In this regard, as at December 2025, total public debt, including sovereign guarantees, amounted to 90.03 billion pula. This comprised 55.98 billion in domestic debt and 34.06 billion in external debt. Total debt as a proportion of GDP is estimated at 33.02%, with external funding at 12.49% and domestic having reached its threshold of 20% of GDP. The debt to GDP ratio is expected to reach 38.77% of GDP by March 2026. Mr. Speaker, with the GIA at critically low levels, debt levels are expected to increase significantly in order to finance the projected deficit. This additional financing would raise total public debt, including guarantees, to an estimated 44.66% of GDP by the end of 2026-2027 financial year, thereby requiring a recalibration of the statutory debt ceiling currently set at 40% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, while such an increase may generate short-term credibility concerns, these are outweighed by the significantly greater economic risks that would arise from a sharp fiscal consolidation needed to stay within the existing ceiling. In this context, a well-defined increase in statutory debt limit, anchored on a credible consolidation plan and supported by structural reforms, will be necessary to balance fiscal sustainability with economic growth. This approach, Mr. Speaker, would create sufficient space for a gradual and orderly fiscal adjustment while preserving the flexibility required to respond effectively to adverse shocks. Conclusion. Mr. Speaker, the 2026-27 budget is a statement of faith in Botswana and in the ability of her people to renew, to rebuild, and to rise. It recognizes our challenges honestly, it confronts our weaknesses directly, and yet affirms without hesitation that our best days are still within reach. Anchored in the 12th National Development Plan and the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, this budget signals a new chapter, one defined not by fear of scarcity, but by ushering in a new era of economic transformation and fiscal prudence. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Speaker, this budget tells our people that the difficulties we face are not a verdict on our future, but a call to responsibility and resolve. Fiscal prudence is not austerity for its own sake. It is a deliberate choice to secure the basics that define dignity and stability in everyday life, such as schools that function, clinics that have medicines, and roads that are safe and maintained. At the same time, we refuse to allow the present constraints to trap us into stagnation. Even as we protect and restore these essentials, this budget is intentionally designed to be reform-driven and forward-looking, so that along fixing what we must fix and what must work, we actively transform our economy. We unlock new industries. We create jobs and build a more resilient and prosperous Botswana for the future. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak plainly against corruption. Every pula stolen from the public purse is a clinic not built, it's a school left to decay, it's a road that becomes a grave, it's medicine that never reaches a patient. When resources meant to save lives are diverted for personal enrichment, the consequences are measured not only in lost opportunities, but in lost lives. Mr. Speaker, Botswana will not and must not be held hostage by corruption, greed, or indifference. Mr. Speaker, this government chooses accountability, it chooses integrity, and it chooses transparency. The reforms outlined in this budget strengthened oversight institutions, modernized procurement, tighter financial controls, and zero tolerance for the abuse are deliberate. To those entrusted with public office, public resources, and public trust is demanded that you serve with honor, that we all serve with honor. Mr. Speaker, I would like to extend sincere appreciation to our development partners, bilateral and multilateral institutions, and private sector collaborators who continue to walk this journey with us. Your partnership strengthens our resolve, it complements our efforts and reinforces Botswana's standing as a credible, principled, and forward-looking nation. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to pay tribute to the men and women of the public service. Your work sustains the machinery of government, and it underpins the credibility of our reforms. The nation is grateful. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to end with a poem, The Power of One, by Ashish Ram. One song can spark a moment, one flower can wake the dream, one tree can start a forest, one bird can herald a spring, one smile begins a friendship, one hand clap lifts a soul, one star can guide a ship at sea, one word can frame the goal, one vote can change a nation, one sunbeam lights a room, one candle wipes out darkness, one laugh will conquer gloom, one step must start each journey, one word must start each prayer, one hope will raise our spirit, one touch can show you care, one voice can speak with wisdom, one heart can know what's true, one life can make the difference. That is all this nation needs to turn around its fortunes. It needs each one of us, each one of you, to believe that you are special, that you can act, that your act, your work, your dream is enough to lift this nation. This nation will emerge from the troubled waters. We will rise as a people. We will build a nation in which every citizen, in every hamlet, in every valley, in every village, in every town, will have a fair chance, a fair opportunity to find and live a life that is empowering, a life that is fulfilling, a life that brings out the best in each one of us. This should be the solemn commitment of all of us, citizens, the people of Botswana, wherever you are. It is the commitment of this government, led by President Gideon Bok. It is certainly my solemn commitment. It is my promise that I will work tirelessly, I will work fairly, I will work tenaciously, and I will not rob this nation. I will not rob our people. Of a single coin or a single note from the coffers of this nation. And I will be guided by the words or the word in James 3:17. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. Mr. Speaker, I now move that the appropriation 2026-2027 Bill 2026, Bill number 1 of 2026, be read a second time. I thank you.
Order, members. Order. Members. The question is that the appropriation 2026-2027, Bill 2026, Bill number 1 of 2026 be read a second time. Order, members. In terms of Standing Order 86.2, the debate on the appropriation bill shall not commence until one clear day has elapsed, and thereafter not more than 10 further days shall be allotted for the second reading of the bill. And the debate on the second reading will therefore commence on Wednesday, the 11th, February 2026. And as it is the tradition in this House, the leader of opposition will be the first to respond if he so chooses. Honourable members, in line with Parliament going green, honourable members, you will not be furnished with hard copies. But the few available hard copies will be availed to not all, but some of our invited guests as they walk out of the chamber. Honourable members and invited guests, we are invited for light refreshments at the Parliament Gardens. And again, in line with belt tightening, I can't promise a sumptuous meal. Honourable members, we only had one item on our agenda, and as that concludes the business of today's order paper, I shall now call upon Leader of the House, Minister for State President, Defence and Security, Honourable Mweti Mohasa, to move a motion of adjournment. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg that this House do now adjourn.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye. On the contrary, say no. No. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Let's adjourn. Honourable members.